The summer of 2020 is holding up really to be a very exciting time for anyone investing and developing properties, as Boris Johnson and his government unleashes a whole raft of planning reforms and new permitted development rights that allow us property developers to just get on with it really and do stuff without the hindrance of red tape and bureaucracy that really holds us back. But just as we're getting excited and starting to have a lot of fun anticipating all these reforms, there are a bunch of vested interests looking to rain on our parade, and the media has got hold of this. In this video, I'm going to put to bed some of the myths surrounding permitted development and why it's a good thing for both developers and wider society. So stay tuned till the end, you'll certainly learn a lot. My name's Ranjan Bhattacharya. I've been investing and developing properties for over 30 years. I specialise in converting commercial buildings into residential usages and also repurposing defunct commercial buildings to other commercial uses. This is my channel. We put out new content each and every week, and it's all dedicated to helping you stay on top of your property investing game. If you're new here, make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because we'll notify you as soon as we upload a new video. And also smash that like button straight away. And if for some chance you don't like this video, smash that dislike button twice, just to make doubly sure of your dissatisfaction. Okay, permitted development rights. What are they? Permitted development rights allow us to repurpose and do development works without the vagaries of planning. The planning system is archaic and it holds the whole system up. We have a situation induced by COVID-19 and a trend that was happening anyway, in that we have the wrong type of commercial buildings out there in the UK. We have too many offices, we have too many shops, and what is there, a lot of them are just badly configured and are not suitable for modern day usages. So rather than let them go to waste, rather than let them flounder empty, it makes sense to allow developers to repurpose these buildings simply and quickly for use by society. And what better way to help kickstart the economy after this COVID-19 shutdown? Because when a developer gets into a space, they're spending money, they're buying materials, they've got labour, they've got everything going on, and there's money being spent in the economy and there's activity happening. And the government gets all this, and they are bringing about a whole sweeping range of reforms to the planning system and new permitted development rights to allow us developers to just get on and do it. Now, I'm very excited about these changes, and during the course of the following weeks, I'll be sharing with you in video updates exactly what these changes mean and exactly how you can benefit from them. But quite frankly, this video is a bit of a rant because I'm a bit pissed off. I'm a bit pissed off and can I say that?
Yes.
I'm a bit pissed off with this article in the reputable Times newspaper. It's titled, "Landlords Use New Rules to Make Flats the Size of Sheds." Now, I'll just quote from the article itself. "Property developers have used new freedoms to avoid planning permission to create flats no bigger than sheds." Well, that's a little bit of a loaded first sentence, isn't it? Property developers have used new freedoms to avoid planning. We're not avoiding planning permission. We're not avoiding anything. There is planning permission, which is required for certain types of development, and there's certain types of development that doesn't need planning permission. So it doesn't mean that I'm avoiding anything if what I'm doing in terms of developing does not need permission. I don't need planning permission to put up a light bulb. That doesn't mean I'm avoiding planning permission by putting in my light bulb, does it? So we start off this report with a loaded sentence. Who has commissioned it? Well, the government's commissioned it, and they've got this geezer, Ben Clifford. Oh, he's an academic at the UCL, School of Planning. So what's his vested interest in all of this? Well, taking a look at Ben Clifford's CV, it turns out he's a professor at the UCL, and UCL is one of these places where they teach real estate and they teach urban planning, and basically they do degree courses for planning officers. Ben Clifford has written textbooks for planning officers, and here are a couple of his books. I'll promote them. You can get them at Amazon and all good bookstores, I'm sure, but he's writing textbooks and he's training planning officers. Now, if there is permitted development and if there's more and more permitted development rights for developers, then hang on a minute. we don't need to go and seek planning permission. What's the point in writing textbooks for planning officers? Because his textbook's about training planning officers to give us all the red tape that permitted development is trying to free us of. He's got some vested interest there, hasn't he? I mean, it always amazes me how, have you noticed how in the papers there are so many surveys telling us how coffee is so good for us? Drink 5 cups of coffee, it helps prevent cancer. And then you scroll down to the bottom and it says, sponsored by the Coffee Growers Marketing Board or something like that. You know, you always have to look at who's producing a so-called independent report and figure out what their vested interest is. So now that we know that this isn't exactly an impartial view here by Mr. Clifford, let's look at some of what he's got to say. Well, we'll go back to this quote here. Under permitted development, he's talking about people have built buildings without adequate natural light. Well, let's just have a look at exactly where this issue came from. This came from a planning application for an industrial building, which I've got up here. It was in Watford. And this industrial building, they applied for permitted development rights to convert this into flats. Now, the thing is, the media jumped all over this proposition because they said, oh, shock, horror, you're converting this warehouse into flats. But where the hell are the windows for natural light? Well, the media don't understand permitted development rights and development, so they just got the wrong end of the stick and the government reacted to them and all of this sort of stuff. But this is complete balderdash, and let me explain why. When you apply for permitted development under the rules that exist, not under the rules that are going to come in a few months' time, but under the rules that exist, permitted development allows for the change of use. It doesn't allow for changes to the exterior of the building. Those are subject to a full planning application. So you see this building here, this little warehouse. It would be a 2-step process to convert this into flats. The developer will be applying under permitted development rights to change the use into a number of flats and then make a separate planning application to punch in holes in the exterior to make proper windows and doors. Of course, what the newspapers have done have jumped all over the permitted development right application, which doesn't show the windows and doors because that makes a nice news story, shock, horror, evil developers at it again type of stuff, and completely missed out the separate planning application for the windows and doors. So they're completely wrong on that score because they're only looking at the PD application and not the corresponding planning application, which actually is the application that changes the exterior of the building, which allows people to punch in the windows, which gives the natural light. Now you can see Ben Clifford and his motley crew of academics are clutching at straws here. I mean, look at this quote here. I mean, he's suggesting that permitted development conversions have resulted in worse quality residential environments than planning permission conversions across a range of factors widely linked to health, well-being and quality of life. Listen, there are people in slums that are happy, there are people in slums that are miserable, there are people in mansions that are miserable, and there are people in mansions who are happy. Happiness is really about you as an individual. You've got to be happy with yourself. Now, this is the one I love. I mean, they always bang on about this. 22% of properties created through permitted development met national space standards. Now, there are some national space standards. They talk about 50 square meters for a one-bedroom flat and the like. But the thing is, we've got to look at the background to these national space standards. These national space standards were conceived a long time ago when any residence or occupier of that space would have a hell of a lot of stuff. Those were the times where if you had a TV, it looked like this. Then you'd have a record player that looked like this. Then you'd have your DVD, CD collection, books you'd have all this stuff which took up a ton and ton of space. These days, all this stuff that people used to have is now replaced by a simple tablet. So the space standards were developed at a different time than there is now. Now, the UK has a desperate lack of affordable housing. What is affordable housing? Well, at the end of the day, property is priced per square foot. If your property is in a given location, then roughly most properties in that location will be priced at roughly about the same level per square foot. So the only way of delivering affordable housing is to optimize the floor layout better. So if you can use a smaller space, but you can optimize the space far better, then you can do with less square foot for a particular flat. And therefore, because property prices are based on price per square foot, the price of that flat will be cheaper and therefore more affordable. And because we're talking about repurposing existing buildings, existing offices and existing retail units, these are already located in areas, in built-up areas where people want to be. Now he's going on, banging on about people building studio flats and talking about studio flats being 20 square meters. We've done a few of these 20 square meter type of studio flats ourselves. Now let me tell you one thing. When you talk about 20 square meters, you're talking about 20 square meters of floor space. But remember, many commercial buildings, and certainly the ones that we've converted, have had very high floor-to-ceiling heights. What does that mean? That means that you can have these New York loft-style galleried bed decks and the like. And remember, if you've got a floor-to-ceiling height, which is 3.5 meters or whatever, then areas like kitchens and bathrooms don't need to be that high. So it's very easy to say have a kitchen space and a bathroom space and kind of stack on top some kind of galleried mezzanine bed area and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is that even when you've got 20 square meters of floor space in a piece of accommodation, you may be optimizing the vertical space of that unit to create a lot more usable space. Now, the rest of what they're talking about is absolute nonsense, really, and smaller space units need to overcrowd and all of that. No, it doesn't. Just because you've got a studio flat, it doesn't mean you're going to have a family of 5 in there, does it? A studio flat is only going to be occupied by 1 or maximum 2 people. And I'll tell you something, the conversions that we have done these sort of conversions in order to rent them out. And I'll tell you something, what we find is that our tenants in those units tend to stay the longest. In terms of total occupancy length, our tenancies stay for the longest in our converted buildings out of ex-commercial properties. Why? Because those properties are built in a very space-optimized way. They allow single and couples to live very, very sort of efficiently, if you like. And also, because they're converted from commercial buildings which are so well located, everything they need is on their doorstep and they're very popular indeed. I really wonder whether Ben Clifford and his cohorts have actually done any kind of survey among people who live in converted commercial buildings. Now, I thought Mr. Ben Clifford was a professor at basically teaching a real estate type course. So he should understand the fundamental difference between planning regulations and building regulations, because he goes on to talk about here, residents claim that mold, noise, limited natural light, that antisocial behavior were damaging to their health. Well, developers are not responsible for antisocial behavior. One of the biggest housing categories to suffer from antisocial behavior are the housing that's developed by local authorities. Local authority housing estates have the biggest problems with antisocial behaviour. That's where you have bits of old car parts and supermarket trolleys tossed in the garden and God knows who smoking God knows what at every corner. Now, that sort of environment has been created by the state. You don't blame the state as the developer for that? No. Antisocial behaviour is clearly the responsibility of the occupants themselves. So, and finally, the Times article ends by quoting from the findings of this report, and I shall just read out this here. We urge the government to act on these independent findings. Independent? Are they having a giraffe? I mean, we urge the government to act on these independent findings and remove permitted development rights. Well, of course they want to remove permitted development rights, because how is our friend Ben Clifford going to make money selling textbooks to planning officers and actually training them up to fill us with red tape and bureaucracy? So, listen guys, PD, permitted development, is an enabler. The rules that have grown up around planning control, if you like, are archaic. Now, a few years ago, I used to have a foreman who used to work for me doing many of our conversions, and he was a Polish chap. And he used to say to me, you know, Ranjan, it was easier to get things done in Poland under communism than it is to get things done in the UK under your planning laws. That's what he used to say to me. And it has been true. It's been balmy at the types of things that the planners can poke their beaks into and stop and just snarl the system up with red tape. Boris and his team wants to clear that. He wants to clear the decks to allow us to redevelop defunct buildings for which there is no further use for. We have too many shops, we have too many offices, and with offices, for example, we have the wrong type of offices. We have office space that people don't want. We've got GP surgeries and dentist practices in old buildings which don't work for the way people want to consume those services today. These buildings are all defunct and they all need repurposing. And Boris is allowing us to do this under permitted development rights. It's going to be good for developers. It's going to be good for the economy. It's going to be good for getting the economy to bounce back. And it's going to be good for the environment as well, because reusing existing buildings and repurposing existing buildings on existing brownfield sites is going to be far better than going into that greenfield sites in the green belt. So ignore some of the gumph you read in the papers. Look at who's writing the articles and look at their motivations and inspirations. There's going to be plenty more on this channel about the permitted development rights and how you can use them to further your development careers and repurpose old buildings. That's all coming up, so make sure you've subscribed and hit the bell icon so that you're notified. Also comment below, tell me what you think of what I've said. Sorry it's been a bit of a rant, but we'll cover the permitted development changes in forthcoming videos. Until the next video, see you guys soon.